Top of the top, everybody. My name is Jason Anderson. I am a writer now, and I only very recently became a writer when I released my first official novel, The Virgins, on March 25th under Gamma Cancri Publishing. This story means a lot to me and everyone who decided to purchase a book. You all are forever locked in with me, and I appreciate your support. At the end of this clip will just be some audio from an interview I did at the official release. I think that it provides some context to the book and an introduction to who I am and what I want my work to be. When I set out to create, I always wanted it to be about the art, not content. I don't create for entertainment. This is always about just telling stories. So this is my story, and I hope you enjoy it. You'll find more on cancri.com, CAN-CRI. A little flip on Cancri because I'm a Cancer, but without further ado, this is my interview. Thank you for your time.
I just want to start off by saying that as most of us, if not all of us in this room know, Jason really doesn't ask for much. So it's very important to him, and it means a lot to him that all of us are here. And I also want to say that I've produced a lot of interviews before. This is by far my favorite. I'm very excited to talk with you. So let's dive in. Start off by telling us about who's the audience for your book.
That was a hard one for me because I didn't really write the book with a lot of people in mind. Like I mentioned earlier, I wrote with like 5 people in mind. My Aunt Jackie was one of them. She's not here. My friend Kendra. Kendra was one of the people who kept telling me that you're going to write a book. And she kept saying it. And every time where I kind of felt like, man, I don't really feel like doing this anymore. People don't even read. I don't even know people that read books anymore. Just thinking about Kendra, thinking about my Aunt Jackie, and some of the people that I wanted to connect with this book helped me see it through. So when I actually think about the specific people, it's really those short list of 5, and anybody who can relate to any of the things that I talk about, whether it's family stuff, relationship stuff, traumatic things, a little bit of jokey jokes in there, but just anybody who feel me.
And talk to me about, like, you shared some quotes earlier from some authors and poets. Who are some other folks that inspired your artistic process?
Oh man, so a couple of years ago, before I even started this book, there is a man named Haruki Murakami. Murakami wrote this book called Norwegian Wood. And I really like Norwegian Wood because, like, the foundation of Murakami books, a lot of people say, like, he writes the same story over and over again, just like different settings, different time periods, but it's the exact same story. But I appreciate that because I think about, like, as an artist, I feel like we should have the freedom to be able to write or create wherever we want. Like, Andy Warhol was painting chicken noodles cans. Nobody told him to stop painting chicken noodles. So I really appreciated the fact that Murakami was one of those people that kind of knew what he wanted to say and just kept saying it and kept refining his process. And also, I really, really appreciate this writer named Junot Diaz. He has a book called This Is How You Lose Her. It's probably like my favorite book. And it's only because of a small section, one paragraph in the short story, Otra Vida, Otra Vez, where it is talking about a woman who is having a conversation with her friend. And she was asking her, how do you know if he loves you or not? And her response was, well, back home in the DR, I used to have this light switch. Sometimes I would flip it on and it didn't cut on. Sometimes I would flip it on and it would flicker. Other times it would just cut on. That's how I feel like he feels about me. And that was so impactful for me. And when I was writing this, I wanted to just write something as good as that because I really, really love that quote and that segment.
And you mentioned setting just now. Talk to us about the fact that this book is based in the DMV area. Why did you make that the backdrop for your book?
Man, it's home. And for me, home is everything. And it's such a difficult thing to really capture because it's culture, it's people, it's experiences. And those things play into the story in that some of the settings are very specific to this area. You don't get the cover without the area. You don't get the monuments and all of those things. And you see like these big statues and monuments and important places to people from other areas when they think of just like the DMV. Well, I'm from Maryland specifically, but also just kind of living in the shadow of the city. But there's so many rich experiences that you only get from being in certain parts of this area. And it's a culture that's really specific to us. When you go to New York, they had their own thing. When you go to California, down south, they had their own thing. And the way my characters talk, even back to what I said about Juno Diaz, he has a point about, he writes in Spanish. And he said, I always am going to write in Spanish because they let J.R. Tolkien write in fucking made up elf language and nobody complains about that. So I'm going to keep writing in Spanish and I'm not going to give a translation. So when I was writing this book and I wanted to make it as honest as possible, I was using colloquialisms. And for my uninitiated people, I was using slang in the book. I was saying a whole bunch of words that are indicative of where I'm from because it adds a certain texture to the story. And just those very specific experiences that you don't get from anywhere else, just cultural wise.
And with your reading that you just finished, we got to meet some of the characters. Talk to us about your favorite character and your least favorite.
Now, I feel bad saying this on the heels of Black History Month, but we are ways away from it. There's a character in there. Her name is Jules. Jules is a white girl. Now, I love this character because it was such a experiment for me. And again, like I said, this story is based on a lot of my experiences, based on a lot of conversations and even experiences I've had. But it's also a lot of stuff that I really had to make up. Jules is the most 100% made up character, and it's inspired by a random white girl I just met at Silver Spring one day. And she just had this smell about her. Not a bad smell. It was like ethereal, like she hypnotized my mind, and I could not get that scent out of my head. And for whatever reason, I was like, I want to have my main character have a white slave companion. I seen how your face looked. It's a companion, but it's about white slave. And I really love that character. Jules is one of the most just intelligent characters. She is Yaya's like right-hand person and a person who gives him, as much as I talk about just like this area coloring the texture of the story, she has a totally unique outside perspective because she's not immersed like us. The characters are, for the most part, Black, Hispanic, minorities. Then we had this one white girl in there who's pushing a different perspective that other characters might give you, but sometimes you need to hear it from people outside of your perspective for you to really internalize it. Because sometimes you see yourself in other people and you feel a little bit like, well, what the hell you know? You're in the same position I am. Well, you come from the same shit I come from, so how you gonna tell me something? But when you find people outside of that give you similar thoughts, it validates that advice that people give you a bit more. And my least favorite character might be the mom character, only because I feel like it's really hard for me to write those close, intimate relationships of parent and child. Because I didn't want to filter too much of me and my mother into it. Me and my mother are like the same person, for those who know us, but that causes us to bump heads a lot. And even though it's a similar thing with like Yaya and his mom, I think one of the bigger differences with the character of my story and the relationship he has with his mom is, me and my mother is like, we always gonna be locked in. Like, I argue with my mother, we talk crazy. I had to hang up on her yesterday. She was blowing me. But having one of those relationships, having a writer relationship that doesn't really feel like it's redeemable. And that's hard for me because as the person who is writing this, I always want everybody to kind of have a happy ending. And being in a situation where I'm writing a relationship that doesn't seem like it's going to necessarily fix itself, and having to be okay with that was difficult for me.
You weren't looking at me, so I was
Sorry.
like, I was giving you a second. And what do you want readers to take away from this?
Oh man! Again, just one of those quotes that I used before from Mary Oliver, thinking about the own boxes of darkness that we all might have gotten at a different point, whether it was from familial trauma, whether it's relationship trauma, whether your kids make you want to rip their heads off, whether it's your parents who make you feel the same way. Work, just having the understanding that sometimes those traumatic experiences can turn into a gift at a different point. You know, we just came out the pandemic. It was hard for a lot of people losing family, whether they self-transition, whether it's health, whether it's violence, a whole bunch of different things. And it weighs on our souls. It makes us not really want to be motivated and to keep moving forward. But to be able to write something that I feel like a person was at least able to see a journey through and to learn and develop something, I feel like was my gift that I got. And finishing it made me feel like that. So for other people, when they take something away, at least know that you can have traumatic experiences. You can run into these blocks that you have gotten from trauma that's not even yours, whether it's generational trauma, things that had nothing to do with you. You didn't play a role in these relationships that affect you negatively, but you can still turn that into something that allows you to springboard your life into something positive, and you can be better for the people that you love.
And I just got one more for you. What themes do you think stick out the most?
I think the easiest one for a lot of people, and it's because of the perspective that the story is written from, is like relationship stuff, you know, going through toxic relationships, being on the receiving end and being the perpetrator at different points, because I do really believe that we all get our turn to be somebody else's stepping stone. Whether we're the person that they might take advantage of, or we're just the person who stayed a little bit longer than we probably should have. But we also get the chance to do the stepping. So that is probably the easiest thing to pull out. I would say probably the most important one for me is just thinking about the way the relationships you have with people in general affect who you are. And again, those relationships that might not even be ones that you're actively participating in. We got aunts, uncles, cousins, god sisters, brothers, and all of these different people that we're connected to that might have their own set of trauma that has ripple effects throughout our family. Because of the trauma that they have, the younger people who are in that family got to deal with some of those things. And they got to find a way to navigate those stresses for things that they never really played a part in. And for me, that's probably the most important thing that I would like people to pay attention to, because the backdrop for me is always the family structure that gives us a Yaya, that gives us some of the other main characters. We don't get who they are without the structures that they come from.
I lied. One more. And I don't think you're going to like this one, so stay with me.
Whew. Let me think if I will.
No. How do you feel in this moment right now, being here at your book signing? How do you feel? Because he wasn't gonna like it.
Dang, this is hot. Because I feel like I like to trick myself and believe that I know how I feel at every moment whenever something happens. Like everybody who knows me knows I have an immediate response to everything. This is why I made my mother butt heads a lot.
We prep these questions, but that one's not prepped, so.
Yeah, it got me punched a lot of times.
Yeah.
Because I just had those immediate responses, but truthfully, I don't always know how I feel. Sometimes it takes me years to really even process and think about just anything. And I spend a lot of time kind of distanced from my emotions because I am a really sensitive person. Like, I keep reiterating the fact that I appreciate you all are here because I was fuming when I felt like, damn, nobody about to come to my shit. This how y'all gonna do me? Like, niggas know, like, I'm really damn, like, they don't love me. Because a big part of just who I am and being sensitive, I can't really separate what people do for me from how they feel about me. And I have a real big complex about just wanting to be everybody's favorite person. And I always want everybody to love me. So when I don't feel like they're expressing that, it really does weigh on me. Like, now I turn into a different person. Some of y'all see Avery over there laughing. They seen me act a fool a couple times because of that. And again, just before I got here, today specifically, it didn't even really feel like, damn, this really about to happen. But in this moment, man, this shit is like, it means a lot to me. I got my great-grandmother here. I got my grandmother here. I got my mother. I ain't seen my mother and father in the same room in years. literally. And but me, bro, I ain't seen it, so that does something to me. Being able to see my uncle here, my aunts here, my grandmother being able to share some of these thoughts that a lot of them inspire, even friends that I ain't seen Beanie since high school maybe. I think these are people that I think very highly, and I don't take it for granted that people show up for me. And yeah, I told my friend Jakai, she's not here right now, that I might cry this joint. I almost had a little moment when I said this shit about running the power, but I ain't gonna get y'all the tears yet. But it really means everything to me. Maybe I cry tonight when y'all can't see me. I'm a gangster. I'm a gangster first.
No. Well, we love you and we're very proud of you. And thank you guys.